Hi tubers, hi, I'm back with 20 Books 2022, still filming in Yarmouth. And okay, now this is a book by Heather Morris called Stories of Hope. I got it in the works, it was in a sale, okay, so the cover is a bit battered and dented, but hey, it was a quiz. So now she was, or is, the author of the Tattooist of Auschwitz, which a while ago I did a review on that because it was the book that Auschwitz denounced. Now I've been to Auschwitz, it's a heartbreaking place with place of reverence, a place where if you walk through the doors you fall silent because it's respect. Okay, and Auschwitz itself denounced the book as inauthentic, which if you read the book and if you read anything to do with Auschwitz, it is kind of inauthentic. It's a fictionalized story of Lale Sokolov, who was a tattooist, and but it was kind of all over the place. It was badly researched, if it was even researched, and Heather Morris received a lot of criticism. She actually blocked the Auschwitz itself, the Auschwitz-Birkenau memorial, on all social media, and there was some absolutely beautiful articles, no, beautiful, well-written articles, breaking down the book about what went wrong or what isn't right, and I think this book is in her way of Heather Morris actually responding to that criticism, and it's a kind of disjointed kind of mishmash of a kind of memoir, if you will, of her life, how she met Lali, her kind of interest in this until now. It was originally a screenplay and it became a novel in the end, and the novel I know has actually been opted for a film. And according to the book, Ryan Gosling playing Lali. Okay, I'm actually behind it. He's a marvelous actor. So, oh, and Natalie Portman playing Gita. Wonderful. Also a wonderful actress. So, it's a very kind of disjointed book, which is kind of like a memoir, a bit of self-help about how to listen to our elders, our children, ourselves, interspersed with her life as a writer, Lali, Gita, Cilka, okay, and her book that came later, which I haven't read, called The Three Cities of Auschwitz, okay. And let me just start now. It's kind of well written, okay, but it starts the introduction during the start of the pandemic, okay, right. As Lali always said to me, all you have to do is wake up in the morning. Maybe we are now being asked to wake up more in more ways than one. Could this be our planet telling us to slow down? Has not been screaming at us for decades to take better care of her. How many warnings must she give before we start listening to her? Many already have. In every growing country there has been an ongoing battle gathering forces in the past couple of years between governments and scientists over the impact of climate change. COVID-19 is a common enemy that does not discriminate over religion, politics, gender, orientation, race, or age, and its effects are being felt across the world. Okay, this was written during the COVID-19, at the start of the pandemic, okay, and it talks about how she actually met Lali. Now, I found this very interesting because most books about the Holocaust or that terrible time of Auschwitz always kind of end at the liberation or shortly after the liberation. This kind of goes into his life, what happened next. Now, I did mention in my previous review of it that there was way more to the story, okay, than the issue that was being presented, okay. I mean, it doesn't change the fact that Lali, this is on his own Wikipedia page, okay, he wanted his story to be told because he feared that history would view him as a collaborator. Clearly he was not. He was a young man with the gift of the gab who was forced into absolute terrible circumstances, okay. My heart broke for him, what he went through. I mean, can you imagine? Due to the fact he was a tattooist of Auschwitz, he got better accommodation, he got better food, and he had to go to sleep every single night knowing that with the devil's arithmetic he tattooed on people's arms, it gave him time. It gave him more time. But it's still a very, very heartbreaking thought, okay? The day he met Lale Sokolov, a few weeks after the death of his wife, he told me he hoped he could stay alive long enough to tell me his story. He didn't want to be with me. He said every time I knocked on his door, I wanted to be with Gita. These were the words he said to me each day until the day he said he now hoped he could live long as it took for him to talk, for me to listen, so I could write his story. I had no qualifications for this. What did I possess, though I didn't think about it at the time? was my ability to listen, truly actively listen. Okay, so by her conversations with Lali, okay, she actually learned to listen more. Okay, listen to not just Lali, but to the world and to the people around her. Someone's sitting there telling you of their experience of the Holocaust, and it is mentioned in the book. It was actually at the time it did kind of get to Heather Morris's soul. It can't have been easy. Okay, all right, okay, and this book received, the Tattooist of Auschwitz received a lot of criticism, and Heather, in a way, kind of tries to confront it head on in this way. Okay, right, this bit here, this is page 38. Too often, people voice criticisms to me of the choices Lali made in surviving the Holocaust. Sure, he bent the rules, sure, he survived where so many didn't. That is the guilt of all Holocaust survivors. Too often, I am forced to bite my tongue in knowledge and entitled to an opinion, inwardly screaming the words, "You do not get to judge, you weren't there, you cannot know, you cannot imagine. And if you think you can, you cannot tell me the choices you have made under the same circumstances." Okay? I hasten to add that one is critical of Lali Gidra. Cilka's choices was there in the camps, and so often it wasn't even a decision or choice. It just happened that they were the lucky ones to whom an opportunity presented itself, to whom a random and very rare act of kindness was bestowed. That is very, very true. Lali, Gita, Cilka, everyone there, they had no choice in the matter. Surviving through the gift of the gab, okay, surviving by being a talker, surviving by sweet talking, having to do what you had to do, but at the same time, it's such a difficult situation. I'm kind of glad she does. Yeah, I mean, who would have done the same in his circumstances? Okay, but that criticism is, not justified, but it requires a lot more depth, and aspiration which we didn't get. Okay, and one thing is very, very significant is that one thing, Lali wanted his story to be told by someone who wasn't Jewish. Okay, now this kind of explains more why, because that received a lot of criticism as well, because anyone can write a book about the Holocaust, absolutely anyone, but someone who is Jewish would know a little bit more about, what it all meant, the history, the culture, the traditions, the reason why. Okay, why were God's chosen people put through a decade of darkness due to a goose stepper and his ideals and his ideology. Okay. In December 2003, I caught up with a friend I hadn't seen for a few months. Over coffee and a chat, she casually said to me, "You're interested in writing screenplays, aren't you?" A friend whose mother has just died, his father, 87, has asked him to find someone who he can tell a story to. The person can't be Jewish. You're not Jewish. Would you like to meet him? Okay. Right. And Heather Morris really, it's 2003, she really knew nothing about the Jewish history, the culture, even this little bit here, okay? It's just when she's looking at some biscuits from Israel, okay? Right. I turn the packet over, looking at the foreign writing. I'm guessing that's Hebrew writing, so no, I can't read it, but I can tell you they're bloody good biscuits, okay? Right. Okay. And little things here as well, because throughout the entire book of the Tattooist of Auschwitz, Lale Sokolov wasn't his name. It's Ludwig Eisenberg. Okay, it's kind of a footnote afterwards. Okay, that he changed his name, but the fact he changed his name. Now, he was the only surviving male member of his family. His sister survived. She went into hiding, and his parents, they passed away. Lale did a very, very creative thing. He volunteered to go to the camps in lieu of his family. He stepped forward to try to save their lives, which seriously is a very, very heroic thing. Okay, right. A handsome man, 24-year-old Ludwig Eisenberg, looked back at me. He later told me how he changed his name to Sokolov after the war to sound Russian, and I guess also concealed that he was Jewish. And the more than handsome in that one photo, as he arrogant self-assurance, he's cheeky, suave, a man confident of who he is in his place in the world. The fact that he even changed his name is quite instrumental. He was surviving last surviving male member of your family. By changing your name, you had to, under the circumstances, sound more Russian, okay? But kind of broke the line, if you will. So it's sad it had to do that, but that's not explored in the original book, which it should have been. Someone changing their name after the war, okay, kind of breaking the line, but it wasn't. Okay, right. And Lali's justifications. Now, this book was written in 2020. All this conversation took place in about 2003. Okay, this is Lali's justification of not wanting someone who is Jewish. Okay, right, to write a story. Right, I don't believe there's a Jewish person alive anywhere who's not affected by the Holocaust. I'm a person of family and friends. They will have baggage. They will not be able to write my story. Okay, so that's why. Or would they be a bit more objective than Heather was in the text? Right. And this bit here, this chapter actually is called Listening to Lali. Okay, this is about his memories. Okay, right. By now I was doing a lot of background reading, confirming names of places, people, and corroborating details of Lali's time in Auschwitz-Birkenau. I was constantly aware of the way memory and history sometimes walks in step and sometimes stay them apart. And his memory seemed clear, precise, and trained in my research. Was this a comfort to me? No, it made his memories all the more horrific. That there was this little part in the memory and history was beautiful old man. Too often they walked perfectly in step. Interesting, because she says here that she did her own research, collaborating everything he says to Auschwitz-Birkenau, which however, the Tattooist of Auschwitz, she mentions in like the foreword, I actually remember this because they weren't named, her researchers, but the researchers aren't in this book. Which I wanted to know more about these researchers, like what did they research? Right. Right, just same chapter, Listen to Lali. As this, part of me feels like this book was written to kind of confront Hermod's criticism and with criticism to her work about the story that she wrote, because I've read it. Lali deserved better, better than that book. So, heartbreaking story. Right. History and memory I've written about it previously. I am convinced that when listening to someone related experiences that they witnessed personally and were part of, it's the individual's experience, memory, and recollection takes precedence over the account told by others who did not personally bear witness. Nevertheless, I decided in telling Lali and Gita's story, I'd only include events that could be corroborated by other pieces of evidence, particularly where it related to people other than Lali. Okay, and there's a story that that was moved about a gentleman called Mosberg, which is actually in this because it was collaborated after the event. Okay, now this is more okay about Lali. This one thing I did find very, very fascinating is, as I said before, so many stories okay about the Holocaust at Auschwitz end at a particular point. It's like a forward. Now, in his community, he lived in Australia. Lali's vocation at Auschwitz was known and acknowledged by everyone around him. He was in a group of Holocaust survivors, which is wonderful. He had a network. He had people he could meet up with who knew what he'd gone through. There was no explaining. Okay, that's very, very important. After the events of the Holocaust, so many of the Jewish nation kind of scattered over the world to find sanctuary, haven. Some returned home to find what was there, if there was anything. So the fact that they came together in their own little communities and their own little network, I find absolutely wonderful. They found each other. So, right. This is chapter How to Listen. I always loved it when someone would call to him from the other side of the road. Tattooist, how are you? Me and Lali as a tattooist of Auschwitz-Birkenau greeted him accordingly. Given his age, our walks were not long, no more than 30 minutes. I knew exactly when to turn around and head back home. But for Lali, how was that for him? Okay, Heather loved it. Okay, she admits that she loved it. But just imagine, your job for years was to put ink on people's arms, hopefully buying them some time, and people still recognise you for that fact 60 years after the event. How did that affect Lali? I wouldn't know what I would feel, clearly not. But yeah, okay. as she's the one telling his story, she seems to enjoy telling his story to everyone. Now, even in his final moments, okay, this is page 122. This is when he flies off this mortal plane and he goes to Gita. His son Gary is also there. Okay, right. The nurse walked around him to the other side of the bed, looking at his hand I was holding. She said, "I saw the numbers on his arm." The doctors, obviously seeing Lali for the first time, asked what numbers. The nurse said to himself that he's a Holocaust survivor. I found myself telling a little about who Lali was. Had been a tattooist in Auschwitz, and that's where I met the love of his life. The nurse held Lali's other hand and didn't try to hide the tears that ran down her cheeks. I looked at the young doctor that he was frozen, staring at Lali, not saying a word. Had to be the one to say I would go and let them take care of him. Okay? Right. His final moments, though, that he's there. His story's still being told. Okay, so right. So this is obviously also not just a memoir, okay, about Lali. It's also talking about Cilka, and also interspersed with a book that came later, The Three Sisters of Auschwitz. There's a part of me that's a bit more cynical without that. Are you just plugging your work? Because due to the fact that she received so much criticism over the lack of research for the Tattooist of Auschwitz, it kind of shows together. Well, here I am in Israel, okay, I've heard about these sisters, they're all alive, I think, so I actually read the book. I'm talking to them, okay, just to kind of show, yes, she does do her research. Okay. There's an element of that kind of running through it. Well, it's interspersed with stories of her own family as well. Including quite a very, very sad man. And I know this is a book review, but I'm very, very sorry. While she was doing publicity for her books, her daughter suffered a miscarriage, which is actually very, very devastating for the family. And so I'm very, very sorry. But later on, she did deliver a healthy child. But can I say I'm very, very sorry for that. So, right. But she also talked about the kind of strange timing it takes in her life to kind of be introduced to these people. I mean, from meeting Lali, she heard about Cilka. She wrote Cilka's story, and then was on a tour. She kind of received word in Israel about. No, sorry, she went to Israel. Okay, where she actually found a copy of the Tattooist of Auschwitz, translated into Hebrew, and it's just this book kind of knock on coincidences as well, which kind of take her to the next step. Okay, one to one to one. Okay, right. This bit here. Time and place, little things we do not look for. The people we connect to with accidentally can often impact us more than lifelong friendship or relationship. You don't have to put yourself out there. Just be in that time or place you're in, and the universe has a way of coming for you. Or at least be open, be patient, don't be afraid. That is my approach to human interaction. It's true. Okay? I mean, she absolutely acknowledges it. Okay? So, but this whole kind of thing about always seems to constantly go back to Lali and Gita. It's going back within his life, and I like these aspects because I got to know more about Lali in a way a lot of other books don't about the Holocaust. Oh, I wish I'd known more. Okay? Lali's subsequent desperation to find someone to talk so soon after Gita's death is testament to how bad he needed to tell the world of the girl whose arm he held, dressed in rags, her head shaved and unbathed, who stole his heart. He also felt as if he spoke up and people heard what he had to say, the Holocaust could never happen again. I think he always felt the hand of history on his shoulders and recognised that his role in the Holocaust was unique and worth recording. He was highly intelligent and understood that there was a growing willingness on the part of the remaining generation of survivors to speak out as they reach the end of their lives, and a growing need for people to hear and learn from these stories. That is very, very true. Every single day, the list of Holocaust survivors diminishes. People who have lived long and wonderful lives. And every single story that they tell is so important. Every person who says either Judy, is it the Shallow Foundation that Steven Spielberg started? that records the Holocaust testimonies or in writing is important, which is why it has to be authentic. Okay? Right. But there's one thing I was hoping that she would. Okay? Right. This bit here. This bit here is so, so important. Because she acknowledges it's fictional. Lali's story and Gita's story is fictional. Right. When I chose to fictionalise Lali's story, I wanted to tell it the way he told it to me. I was telling his story, not my version of it, and I stayed true to his storytelling, honouring his narrative in recreating his experiences. The only thing I couldn't recreate was his charming Eastern European accent, of how he'd get words back to front or jumbled up in a way that would have us both laughing. First of all, that is important. However, as other articles, I'm actually going to link these articles, okay? By telling just his story, but they mentioned I did research and collaborated to prove prove events. Yeah, okay? It's a fictional story. Therein lies the problem. His story is so important in the history of Auschwitz, okay? A Jew who was forced to work alongside the goose steppers to tattoo on people's arms. It deserved better than a fictional story. Okay? Way better. And there's another thing as well that I really, really need to talk about, okay? Because, first of all, you do not have to go to Auschwitz to write a book about Auschwitz. You don't. It's wonderful if you do, but Australia and Poland, they're quite some ways away. So, but you have to do your research. Now, I was always wondering, after the events of the book, did Heather Moss actually visit Auschwitz? Did she walk past Bunker 26, which was the Auschwitz brothel? Did she walk into the gas chamber and see the claw marks on the walls? Did she go into the children's kind of section and see the paintings? Did she go into the rooms and see the hair all piled up? Or the glasses, or the suitcases, or the shoes that once belonged to someone? This is what she says about Auschwitz. In 2018, I was in Auschwitz for the annual March of the Living. Together with thousands of men and women and girls and boys, we marched from Auschwitz to Birkenau. Sitting on the grass of a beautiful spring day, dignitaries and politicians will speak of the need to never forget ever again. Right. When the opening music of the formal event ended, the first person to speak was an elderly man. He was dressed in the blue and white striped uniform of this place. The programme told me he'd been a Polish prisoner here, where I sat and now lived in the United States. It was helped to the microphone, a granddaughter beside him to support, both emotionally and physically, twice started to collapse, only to be held back up and insisting on continuing to speak. That's kind of an undignified way to talk about someone. And does this person even have a name? Okay, right. This bit here. I was sitting on the grass, examining every blade around me. The Gita and the other girls sit here scented for 4-leaf clovers. I searched until the words of the old man made me stop and look up at the stage in front of me. Right. I don't know what I was expecting him to say. Probably something about his time here nearly 75 years ago, but he didn't. His opening words was to give thanks and heap praise on the American producer director Steven Spielberg. Okay. Right. Okay. That is that bit there. Oh, by the way, Steven Spielberg, yes, Schindler's List, the Shell Foundation, absolutely. Oh, especially Thomas Kennelly, who actually wrote Schindler's Ark, the book it's based on. Okay. That bit there is the only takeaway from Auschwitz itself. That's it. Was her sitting casually on the grass, looking for 4-leaf clovers. Right. Yeah. Okay. Come on, really. Okay. Also, mention a lot about Cilka's journey. Now, I have not read the book Cilka's Journey. However, one thing I do know, it received a lot of criticism when it was released, basically by Cilka's family. They were not impressed with the fact that this woman who didn't know Cilka was traveling around trying to find information on her, because whatever she went through was clearly very private, and that was ignored. And her stepson absolutely denounced the book, and I believe the ending was changed. I will find articles. Okay, right. When the Tattooist of Auschwitz was published, I began to receive letters from all over the world. People wrote telling me how much they loved Lali and Gita's story. Many of them also asked the question, what happened to Cilka? People wanted to know, and I wanted to tell them. I needed to keep my promise to Lali to write Cilka Klein's story. That novel became Cilka's Journey. I had done my research. I had spoken to survivors who knew Cilka in Birkenau, and also engaged a professional researcher in Moscow to find all the documents, and information she could about Volkata Gulag, the corrective labor camp Cilka was sent to at the end of the war. Right. So she mentions her research for Cilka's Journey. However, at no point about her family and her time in the Gulag. Now, at no point does she mention Cilka's family and meeting up with them, and was it right for her to write her story. To say to Lali, I will write Cilka's story, well, maybe Cilka or her family didn't want her story to be told, especially not in a fictionalised term. That's important. And it even ends with the last chapter is Livia's story, which which is the three sisters of Auschwitz. Okay, that's how it ends. And as a book, book about listening to each other, listening to the ones in our lives, there's some bits actually very, very good. It's part memoir, part talking about Lali and Gita, part self-help novel. Okay, however, it repeats itself a lot. I mean, an absolute lot. I mean, this I picked up on. Okay, this is page 159. A day Lali said to me, have I told you about Cilka? Has become a watershed moment for me. When I said no, who was she? He responded with a simple statement. She was the bravest person, not the bravest girl, the bravest person I've ever met. Okay? Then, this bit here. Right. This is chapter, Helping to Find a Narrative of Hope. Page 239. Did I tell you about Cilka? No, who was she? She was the bravest person, and wagging his finger at me, and added, no, the bravest girl, the bravest person I ever knew. The same sentence appears twice. There's a part of this book, because it's about self-help, and obviously Heather Miles' life, and how she got published as well, are very, very interesting. And parts of her life, learning more about her family, also very, very interesting. However, it's a mess. Now, I mentioned when I did my previous review of the Tattooist of Auschwitz that Lali and Gita deserve better than the story being presented, a fictionalised story. And at times, I think that they deserve better than this. I truly deserve better than this. So obviously, no, I don't recommend it. It's interesting just to kind of see aspects of people after the war in their lives, and how Heather even came to write the screenplay / book. Actually, it was quite interesting because throughout all their interactions, Lale was always saying she's writing a book, and Heather's like, no, I'm writing a screenplay. Well, hey. So, interesting. Very, very interesting, but I can't recommend it. I can't. Not after. It doesn't really confront the criticism. It's just a case of I chose to write a fictionalised story when the story of the Tattooist of Auschwitz deserves better than to be fictionalised. Okay, so ever more stories of hope, finding inspiration in everyday lives. I'm signing off here.